This is Irena from Gwendid, and you're listening to the Metal Pit Podcast.
Welcome to the Metal Pit Podcast. Each week we delve deep into the albums and bands that shaped metal. Please visit our website, The Metal Pit, www.themetalpit.org. And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at The Metal Pit, and on our YouTube channel, which is at The Metal Pit 666. And you can follow our Instagram for the podcast, which is at The Metal Pit Podcast. And we also have a website directly for the podcast, which is www.themetalpitpodcast.com instead of .org like the website is. And if you have any questions, suggestions, comments, maybe you'd like to be a guest on an episode, email me podcast@themetalpit.org. I am your host, Blake, and I run the website, The Metal Pit, and the podcast most of the time. And I'm joined today by two guests. One is one of my writers at the Metal Pit, Lance. How you doing, Lance?
I'm good, Blake. How's it going, man?
Oh, well, as I told you before, I've been sick all week, but I'm
We're
gonna make it through this.
Yes.
And our other guest is Fred Zosa, who is a fan of the podcast, and he messaged in and said, I'd like to be a guest on a podcast. So how are you doing, Fred?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me. This is my first guest podcast as a guest. And I love it when there's like rare albums being talked about out there in podcasts. Like I think that just calls my attention more than the tried and true big, the big albums that everybody knows about. I mean, those are cool, but I think like there should be more talk about all the underground gems, that the unsung heroes of especially the 80s, right?
Yes.
It was a vast, humongous amount of bands under the surface. It's so cool that we have the access to, get into it and talk about it and get people interested. Like a lot of people, you mentioned Malice to the girl that was in your last podcast.
Yes.
And she had like no clue, and she's like almost embarrassed about it. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah, well, she didn't need to be embarrassed. I think she's only 25 years old. And,
yeah,
like, and they only had like 2 albums, didn't they? I think.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Two real studio albums. I think, or maybe there was a couple more, but with a different singer. But whatever. But yeah, so, and that's Malice. Yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about. We'll talk about that later. But Fred, did you want to say anything else about yourself, about any music stuff you do, or that kind of stuff?
Sure, yeah. I thought the part of the segment is how did you discover metal? Should I talk about that?
Sure.
Okay, right on. I was born actually in New York.
Oh.
And the 70s were pretty harsh. I was a little kid. I didn't know any better or what the hell was going on. But then the 80s rolled around, and I was starting to awaken to the greatness of music, thanks to especially the Rocky soundtrack. Survivor. I don't know how old I was when that movie came out. I think I was like 8 years old or 7 years old. And I'm like listening to that distorted guitar, jiggy, 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 and then the cymbals crashing in. And I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck is this? And I just love that. I bought the soundtrack because I thought, hey, maybe there's other songs like that. And I was so disappointed. The rest of the album is just dog poo,
Yeah.
But that's where I started. After that, of course, Quiet Riot came on the scene, #1 album in the whole land, and Van Halen on the radio. So from there on, I was just immediately hooked. I was a metal junkie, full on. I even I begged my dad to give me a guitar. I didn't even know how to tune it. I didn't know how to play it. I just plugged it in and just made noise along to the records. Eventually, I got it. And I got some lessons. But yeah, that's what started me off.
And do you do anything yourself with music now besides listen to it? I mean.
Oh yeah. I started a band when I was a teenager, but this is when I moved from New York. I went down to South America, and I started a band with like local friends that wanted to do the same thing. We were all crazy about metal. So we started a band. It was very raw, very rudimentary, almost like black metal raw. But you know, we were all into thrash and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I mean, we like Hellhammer at that time.
Yep.
It was pretty heavy. But we wanted to go more, you know, prog. Like I got into Voivod eventually and stuff
Hmm.
like that. You know, a Death Row from Germany, great band. Also got
Yes.
into it. So we did a couple of demos. We played around the city, and it was a great time. Like it was one of the best times for me. And after that, I had to come back to the States after like 5 years or something. And then I played in a couple of bands, but nothing as good as it when I was in South America. And then now I'm just like doing music on my own. I think I sent you that Power Slave
Yes. Yeah.
cover I did. It was
Yes.
just cool. So yeah, I dig messing around on my a garage band and jamming out and see what happens. I got a drum machine. You know, that's my best friend right now. The drum machine is always there for me. So yeah, I have an account on YouTube, which I send you as a DefCon 66. If
Okay.
anybody's interested, just check it out. That's my own stuff. And I also posted like, because there's like 1,000 videos in there. Originally, I posted a ton of my favorite tracks and I made videos for it, but this was like 15 years ago. So there's a
Mhm.
ton of videos that I like just made with, you know, just regular software. And
Yeah.
after I started putting in my own stuff, and I have videos up from my band that I started in South America. We were
Mhm.
called Holocausto, which is, you
Mhm.
know, and we didn't know there were other bands called Holocaust, but apparently every country has a Holocaust. So
Yeah,
that's
probably.
great about metal. You can listen to this to a band with the same name, and they'll sound totally different from each other around the world. So yeah, it's pretty cool though.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of bands out there that have put the country behind their name so people know who they are.
Yeah.
Now you're in you're in BC, Vancouver. Are you in Vancouver or
Yeah, I am in BC, but I think I'm gonna be leaving again and going back to South America for a couple of
oh,
years.
oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
get the old band reunited, and we're gonna see what happens next.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I'll keep you posted.
Okay, so so today, as we said, Malice was the group that you suggest. I might as well ask you right now. We're gonna do their first album in the beginning. And let's see, to people that don't know who Malice is, they're kind of a blend between Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. I would say probably more Judas Priest, at least on this album, anyway. And but I'll ask, since Fred wanted to talk about them, well, you kind of gave us a hint of why you want to talk about them, because they're underrated and it's a gem from the 80s, I guess you'd say, and not many people know them. So why did you pick this band and album?
Yeah, it's criminal, you know. These guys had really something going. Okay, I mean, I'll give it to people that 1985, a lot of stuff was already happening, like changing. Things were changing in 85. We had the thrash explosion, 83, 84, and that was just really bubbling. In 1985, you can feel it. You can see it in the record stores. More thrash albums popping out. So Malice was just a little bit too late, you know. And I think
Mhm.
it's a damn shame if they had started in '83 with In the Beginning, even before Motley Crue came out with In the Beginning on Shout at the Devil. They would have
Yeah.
had something more, like more of a grasp on people, and they would have been bigger. At least I think so. But I still think they're worth celebrating for the first album, because after 1984, you had Judas Priest do Defenders of the Faith, and then there was a gap, and then they came out with Turbo. A lot of
Mhm.
people that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I loved it, but a lot of people were like, "Hey, what happened? Defenders was so awesome." It's like, well, here I got a solution for you. Check out Malice In the Beginning. Almost like as if you slap the Judas Priest logo on that album, bam, it's a Judas Priest album, basically.
Yeah. And Lance, when did like when did you first hear Malice or whatever? Or do you, because I know I already talked to you that it's been years since I listened to them and you said the same thing, but can you go back and remember when you heard Malice in the first
They were
place?
they were on my radar a little bit. You know, I had License to Kill back in the day. I remember buying that at a used record store, for like, a couple of bucks. I don't think I had it in the beginning. I remember, hearing about them and reading about them, but I mean, to me, this was a band kind of like, they were bands in that era like Armored Saint, Heavy Pettin', bands like that were supposed to be, the next big thing, and they had everything lined up like Malice did. I mean, we can talk about that with some of the people they had working with them on production and mastering and stuff like that, but they never seemed to get over the way, your Priest and your Crews and your Rats and those bands got over. Like I said, they fall into that sort of like gray era, and like I said, I'll lump in like the two bands that come to mind immediately is Armored Saint and Heavy Pettin'.
Mhm.
Those bands were supposed to be huge, and they never quite got there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's funny because they were on Atlantic Records, which is a big
yeah,
label at the
yeah,
time. They were on that Metal Massacre
yeah.
compilation
Slagle
thing
had
or
them
whatever.
on Metal Massacre 1. I mean, and
Yeah.
that album alone, they, you had Metallica, Rats, Steeler on it. I mean, these guys had Metallica open for them at a show back in '82.
Yeah.
Um, the Troubadour. Then they opened up for Armored Saint in '84, and I don't know. If you watch some of the documentaries, there was a really good one on YouTube. I can't remember the name of it, but and guys like Don Dawkins talk about some of these other bands. And they're like, we have no idea why these bands weren't huge. They were better than us. This guy was a better frontman than me, but they just never got there. And I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, and since they like there's not like if you look on Wikipedia or whatever, there's not a lot of information about them because well, they only had two real albums or whatever.
Yeah,
But so yeah, we don't really know like did they have problems, whatever, other problems that but since they're not Metallica or Iron Maiden, it doesn't come
right.
up because they weren't popular, right? So we don't
Or
that's
was
not
it back
know.
then? There was just so much of this stuff coming out,
Yeah.
but at that time though, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have Spotify. We had to rely on radio or
Magazine.
MTV was just in its infancy, magazines,
Yeah.
stuff like that. It was kind of somewhat luck of the draw, but a lot of hard work as well. Yeah, I was amazed too to find out that Dean Costernova was on drums and like in a very early version of this band, but he was from Portland, so I can see that.
Hmm.
But of course he went on to play with Journey and Bad English, Hardline, a bunch of bands. He made it pretty big.
No, I don't like for I don't even remember I can't even remember for sure when I first heard them, but I'm gonna save what it was. I'm sure you two know this or whatever, but I'll get to it later that but about that because I don't want to say it yet. Which will make sense later. Okay, so anyway, yeah, they did form again. They formed in Los Angeles in 1981 during, like Fred said, the explosion of heavy metal, really, in the U.S. And we had Jay Reynolds and Mick Zane on guitars, Mark Ben on bass, Clifford Carruthers on drums, and James Neal sounding like Rob Halford on vocals.
Big time, big time.
But I don't remember, like Fred told me that, like when I asked him off podcast, of course, why he wanted to do the album. And he said that they sounded like Judas Priest and stuff. And I don't remember that back then thinking that. But I think I did listen, like you said, I listened to the second album more, License to
Yeah.
Kill or Ill, whatever. License to Kill. But I listened to that one more, I think. But then I did listen to this one over again and went, oh, yeah, they do sound like Judas Priest. But I could have thought that back then. It's been so long since I probably listened to that. Okay, so this album debuted in or dropped in 1985. And like we say, it sounded like Judas Priest. The album was produced by Michael Wagner, who had worked with like Dokken and Accept and a bunch of others. And despite positive reviews, it flew under the radar, which is kind of like why we're talking about it. So we're gonna start talking about the songs. I don't think I missed anything.
Hey
So
Blake, can I just throw a couple more things in on the
sure.
album since you mentioned Michael Wagner producing?
Sure.
A couple others who worked on this album. Michael Lardy was engineer and recording assistant Lardy, of course, went on to play with Great White. The man is a musical genius when it comes to studio work and instrumentation. And then the other cool thing is George Marino mastered this album. Now, do you know that name at all?
Yes, I do.
He worked who's who of everybody from AC/DC to Led Zeppelin to Guns N' Roses to Ringo Starr to Jimmy Page, everybody. Fascinating story that I told. I told this on one of my when I did a music podcast years ago. I can't remember what song I played, but he had mastered that one as well. I don't know if you've ever heard the story. I'm trying to find his page now here. On the night of December 8th, 1980, he had finished up a session. He was remastering Yoko Ono's Walking on Thin Ice. Him and John Lennon were in the studio. They left the studio. He says to him, "We'll see you in the morning." They were planning to get breakfast together that following next morning. 20 minutes later, Lennon shot down outside the Dakota.
Oh.
Just kind of that I don't know, oddball stuff that I like,
Yes.
But again, Michael Wagner producing, George Marino, who was a whiz with mastering. These guys had everything lined up for success.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes me kind of suspicious that since they're on a big label and they're getting all these accusations of sounding like Judas Priest and especially the singer, like it makes me wonder if maybe the management for Judas Priest got involved and it blocked, like, what is it, blackballed them, like, ostracized them from advertising too much or getting too big, because I mean, literally, they are basically copying the brand, the Judas Priest brand, which was humongous at the time.
Priest was on Columbia though, and these guys are on Atlantic, so
yeah, so they wouldn't really have any.
Yeah,
they could still file a lawsuit,
maybe.
Yeah, but how many groups sounded like Metallica after Metallica, or sounded like whatever, Slayer?
Only
maybe not Metallica now, but Metallica then.
Yeah. All right, so the songs.
Okay, yeah. So wait, one more thing just before, because I'll probably forget this if I don't mention it. So yeah, Jay Reynolds left after in late '87. This will be after the 2 albums. Jay Reynolds left to join Megadeth, and then he got fired from Megadeth. And I guess where is it? Oh, they opened for Slayer on their Rain and Blood tour, but the fans didn't like them too much, so they quit it.
No.
Yeah.
Because the Slayer fans didn't care, I guess, for Judas Priest sounding band, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, okay, here we go. Rockin' With You is the first song, and we'll let our new guest start. What do you think of Rockin' With You, Fred?
Okay, Rocking With You is definitely, I would say, like a mid-tempo, fist pumping, practice or just warm up for the show or the rest of the album, right? It's an opener, so it's not too crazy. It's not attacking you. It's saying, hey, come along and let's rock together because we're going to rock with you if you rock with us. It's just typical heavy metal ethos, part of the culture. Just take it slow but like mid headbanging, required. And it's not really a strong opener, but if you don't skip it and you just soak it in, you soak in the Malice, you appreciate it more. The more you listen to it, the more you get into it. So it becomes kind of like a vibe. Like, to me, that's what it became, because I said, like, I really like this album, but it's not really grabbing me enough like Judas Priest does. So what I did, maybe to my detriment, is just keep listening to it over and over. And I tried not to skip too many songs, but because it definitely has bangers and it has kind of fillers, not all the way fillers that I would discard entirely, but you can see that they weren't really firing on all cylinders with this song. But it's a good friendly opener, and if you like that heavy metal kind of vibe, you'll stick to it, and then you'll enjoy it more the more you do. So that's basically what I think of. And in the choruses, I also have a problem with the vocals in the background choruses, because I don't feel they're strong enough. Like other bands had like really strong backing vocals, like Rat had like really loud, heavy backing vocals at times, like lack of communication. and
Mhm.
Accept. Also, they also had strong backing vocals, and these guys kind of like, I guess they didn't have too much money for the production. I'm
Yeah,
guessing that,
probably it's, it's their first album, right? And the
yeah,
stuff too. And it was
yeah,
probably better in the second album. I'm not going to go back to my page, but they had a bunch of guests. Dave Mustaine, I think, was
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
on that Chain Gang song. Sorry, I forget the title offhand. But anyway, Lance, what did you think of Rockin' With You?
To me, and maybe you'll get this a little bit. Actually, you're both in Canada. To me, Rockin' With You had kind of like a Helix sort of Kick-Axe feel. You know, it
Mhm.
made me think of like Helix's Rock You or Kick-Axe On the Road to Rock. You know, kind
Definitely.
of that anthem-like sound to it. You know, meat and potatoes, rock and roll. That's what I got from it. You know, it reminded me of sort of those two bands, particularly the Helix with Rock You.
Mhm.
You know, kind of
That's
kind of reminded me
interesting.
of that. It's just sort of had that kind of vibe, that kind of feel to my ear, you know.
And I didn't mention this before, but yeah, I've been to all the listeners. I was sick all week, so I didn't really get a big chance to listen to this album. So I'm just gonna let these two talk about the songs more
Okay,
than
sounds good.
me. Okay, I mean, I'll add a few things in here if I think I need to. Now, the next track, "Into the Ground," I will say this. Now, maybe this is the one they should have started the album with, but I'll let Lance go on this one. What do you think of "Into the Ground"?
I like this one a lot. I'm a guitar solo guy. I thought this song had a killer solo in it, and I also there's a guitar riff behind the chorus that I really liked. You know, I can't sound effect it out or anything, but if you listen to the chorus, there's like a guitar lick, a guitar riff in there that I really like. You know, more solid, solid rock and roll. You know, I thought it was a decent follow up to "Rockin' with You," and I love this solo.
And Fred,
Yeah, I thought it was again very Judas Priest, reminiscent of like a feel good, party anthem. It's more up tempo. It just reminds me like Living After Midnight, or like a song that would follow Living After Midnight, especially like in a live setting. I thought it was a really good song. The more you listen to it, the more you like it. And I love the cheesiness of the heavy metal lyrics in those days. It was just, never gonna stop, never gonna rest, never gonna lay it down. We're gonna run this shit into the ground. We're gonna party all night. And I love that. It's such positivity, which leads to maybe drug addiction or something. Because you just go full broke every night, rock and roll all night, party every day. I love that mentality, but I can see where it could hinder people. But I just love that positivity as opposed to the '90s where everything was dour and depressing. The '80s was
Mhm.
all about celebration, and that's why I keep going back to it. I don't want to feel depressed. I don't want to search my feelings. So yeah, Into the Ground, party anthem. I love it.
Okay, then we go to Air Attack. Now, I think this is one of my favorite ones from listening to this. I tried to listen to this earlier, but as I said, I've been sick. So I was, yeah, whatever. But I think this is a good one. So what do you think of Air Attack, Fred?
Yeah, again, very straight Judas Priest worship. Easily would fit in any album from British Steel, you know, and rock and roll will never die. I love that when he sings that in the song, rock and roll will never die, air attack. And then they do the dive bombs with with their guitar. And it's very theatrical and kind of like reminds me of Top Gun or something. It could
Mhm.
have easily fit in the Top Gun soundtrack instead of like the crap they used back then, the pop music they put in there.
Yeah.
Uh, that's one thing that really pissed me off back in the day. Like heavy metal just went with action movies and horror movies so well, but they rarely got the chance to be on a soundtrack. So it's a
Yeah.
damn. But yeah, it's an earworm. It becomes an earworm. Air attack. You just hear that in your head after the song is over. And I love it. That's like a prime example of why this band deserves more recognition. That song is just absolute killer.
And Lance?
This is where I first heard, the Judas Priest comparison. Obviously, I mean, it's spot on. This is like a hidden Judas Priest track. If you didn't know who it was, you swear to God it was them.
Yeah.
So this is where I really got it, and they do it, and they do it well. They were doing it as good as Priest back then, and that's where I was like, holy, Judas Priest is my note on this, killer track.
Mhm.
Then we go to Stellar Masters. And Lance.
I love this title. And it's basically, more priests. This is where they just keep the priest machine rolling and do what they do best. They got the twin leads, they got the vocal, the Halford, this guy sounds more like Rob Halford than Ripper did, So yeah, just again, killer for the time, straight up, heavy metal for this one. Yeah, great track.
And Fred?
I really like the song. Not as much as the previous, but it keeps you entertained, like with the record as it goes. And I thought the guitar sounded like grungier, like more fuzzy or down to it. It just sounded weird, and they were doing this like intro, like intricate with the snare drum and doing like the riff. It reminded me like a Queensryche meets Metal Church or something like that, like almost power metal.
Yes.
So I thought it was a pretty cool, like kind of like a side departure. Not too much, but it's a really off kilter track that shouldn't fit, but it does nicely. Especially the more you hear it, it's like they just knew how to write the songs in with the certain dynamics and little fills here and there with little guitar parts, and it's like they did spend time in the studio. So, and you can tell like it's worth it. Like it was worthwhile for them to make a full LP, because all these songs, they, even if they're not great, they still have some merit somewhere. Like the chorus is great, this catchy sing along, little guitar sprinkles here and there, like kind of like what Jakey Lee used to do in with Ozzy in Bark at the Moon and Ultimate Sin. He would do all these little acrobatic little sequences here and there, just sprinkled about the song, which made the song that much greater. So yeah, great track.
Okay, then we go to Tarot Dealer. And of course, this first, just with the word tarot, I'm thinking rainbow. But it doesn't sound like rainbow. I'm sure this sounds like Judas Priest too. Fred, what do you think of this song?
Okay, well, this is like one of the songs back in the day. I remember that it just didn't do it for me. So like, I had the vinyl player. I had to grab the needle, lift it, and it just sounded a bit lazy. It sounded like kind of like flaccid, and instead of like bringing the pumping up again, pump up the jam again, they kind of like brought it down. It was like, wait a minute, like there's no energy now. And I lived for the energy back in the day. I was just like, give me more of the high energy fist pumping stuff. And this just didn't do it for me. I skipped it a lot of the times. Later on, I just got tired of going to pick up the needle. I just let it ride, and then I got used to it. It's okay. I like the chorus a lot. Their choruses are really good with that Judas Priest, formula. I think it's really, so you can just enjoy the whole thing. But honestly, it is kind of like a skip track.
Yeah. And Lance, what do you think?
Sitting here kind of smiling to myself because, but first, Blake, I agree with you. When I see Tarot, I thought Tarot Woman, but Rainbow Rising came out in '76. I don't think it had any influence on this song.
No.
Listen to what Fred's saying. This was my favorite track on the album.
Well,
There's
we're not
some
all gonna have the
seriously,
same thought. So
yeah. To me, all right, I'm thinking this album wise, I'm looking back. Of course, they've got on the Wikipedia page, they've got them all listed, in a row. I'm guessing this probably closed out side one, seeing how we've got 10 tracks on this. I don't have a vinyl in front of me.
yeah, I believe
But
so.
so,
Yes.
you're closing out side one. You've got Rockin' With You Into the Ground, which are kind of up. You got Air Attack, Stellar Masters, which that Priest, thing. I could see where sequencing the album, you would throw this at the end of side one or even in the middle of a CD, because, you're just going to be peeling your head off the wall, if you keep going pedal to the metal. So, yeah, this was my favorite track on the album. I thought it was great. And like I said, some seriously tasty guitar. I thought it was a good, little change in energy just to give you a moment to catch your breath, but you've still got the power there with it. So I liked it, and this is what I love about doing this. Cause so what one man doesn't like, another man does. You know, I think it's awesome.
Yes, and there's definitely nothing wrong with that.
No,
No, and yeah, and I can't really comment too much. Like I said, I don't. Yeah. Okay. Then we go to Squeeze It Dry. Okay. Lance, what do you think of Squeeze It Dry?
well, I gotta admit, the first thing I thought of was squeeze my lemon. You know,
Yeah.
um, I liked it. To me, this was sort of back to a Helix like kind of vocal and delivery and structure and everything. I could hear Brian Vollmer singing this. And what I picked up on this was the bass. No pun intended. The bass just throbs in this song. Great bass line in this, and it's just a great rocker. And I'm thinking, if you're opening up side 2 of the album, you know, you've done your flip. Perfect song to open up side 2 after you got Terror Woman, who's kind of brought the energy down a little bit, then you bring it back up a little bit with a nice little rocker like this, a lot like Rockin' With You, in my humble opinion.
Yes. And by the way, I just saw Helix like a week ago.
Really?
How was it?
Oh, good. It was a free outdoor concert in a small town here in
Nice.
Ontario.
I would have loved to have seen Helix. Yeah.
But anyway, sorry to go off track there, but you
No.
brought them up twice, so I thought I might.
Yeah.
Okay, Fred, what did you think of Squeeze It Dry, Keep On Rocking?
Yeah, I had the same thoughts until the juice runs down my leg, and I read a little bit on James O'Neill, and he was a huge Led Zeppelin fan. He was more old school, like he was definitely into Rainbow and all that, like early '70s stuff and late '70s. I think that guy was a bit more old school for the scene, and you can kind of see that, like that he was a little older than the other guys. I'm not sure, but he just looked a little older from the old school guard, and kind of like he reminded me of Quiet Riot, with like the hairline almost going away there, and you had to like use a lot of Aquanet to cover up. But yeah, no, a great song. I freaking love it. Keep on rocking, like very catchy lyrics, very heavy metal. Free spirit running wild. I just want to play. I just want to mess around. Like, man, that just spoke to my like 13-year-old soul right there. I don't know how old you guys were in 1985, but I was barely 13, I think. And so that was like a total major influence. I think that's why I liked any band that sang things like that, and I got into heavy metal. Even though I got really into thrash after that, but I never lost any love for heavy metal. I always respect it. And I see people like other thrashers and death metal fans. You're like, oh, heavy metal is cheesy bullshit and this and that. Like, oh my god, you don't know what you're talking about.
The thrash and everything, it wouldn't exist without the stuff before them, right?
Exactly. It's a foundation. It's like essential. Like, what the hell, man?
And of course, they all influenced the thrashers, of course. Anyway, that's what they were listening to, and they just decided to do something different.
Exactly.
Okay, then we go to No Haven for the Raven. They have some kind of weird song titles here now that I see.
Oh, you're skipping one.
Did
I think. Unless I've got them in a different order.
Yeah,
Shouldn't it be Hellrider?
Oh, why is it? Yeah, why is it like that for? Sorry, I missed
the new edition. I think they remastered.
Okay, sorry, Hellrider. Okay, I don't have Hellrider. Sorry. Whose turn is it? Fred. What do you think of Hellrider?
Yeah, I think I told you, like in the message, that Hellrider is just mind-blowingly awesome track, and it deserves more recognition. More people need to listen to Hellrider because it is a flat-out Judas Priest classic. Like, even never heard of Malice, they did a bona fide Judas Priest classic with this song. It's so damn catchy. Even they have at the beginning they have a motorcycle sound, the motorcycle taking off, and they intersect that sound throughout the rest of the song. And I don't think Judas Priest even did that. Rob Halford goes on stage with his motorcycle all the time, and they never put a motorcycle sound in any of their songs. Malice pretty much pointed it out to them. Hey, you guys are missing this. Like, they were doing them a favor. So yeah, in my mind, Malice gets a point there, and Judas Priest 0 for not putting motorcycle sounds in their songs.
And Lance, what do you think of Hellrider?
I'll tell you, Hellrider came on, and I said, "Holy shit, it's Hellion by Wasp." Listen to the intros. It's the same. It's the same. If you know Hellion by Wasp, and their debut album came out in '84, so this came
Yeah.
out in '85. That intro is Hellion by Wasp. A little bit faster, but it's the same setup. Great track. Once they get into the vocals, then it sort of goes into a little bit of a different direction, into the Priest zone again. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you guys know this, Priest also did a song called Hellrider on Angel of Retribution.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they did. So again, great track. But listen to that intro once you get past that motorcycle sound effect when it kicks in, and then go listen to Hellion by Wasp and tell me if I'm not right.
Well, I'll have to check that song out again.
Yeah, great
Don't
track.
don't let Blackie know because he might go after them.
Exactly. It's astonishingly close. But no, great track. I'm not to put anything aside. Great track. I loved it. But that was the first thing that I picked up on. But yeah, great track.
Okay, now we get to No Haven for the Raven.
Yeah.
In my notes. Now this one does. Okay, we're constantly talking Judas Priest, but this sounds like this is kind of a ballad, close to a ballad as I guess we're getting on this album, right? And it sounds like a Judas Priest ballad. So, Lance, what do you think of this song?
I love the title. I like that moody, slow kind of burn of an intro. Kind of gave me, and Fred mentioned this band earlier, kind of gave me a little bit of a Queensryche, an early Queensryche vibe, off of the first EP or something off the Warning, maybe. But I gotta admit, this is where in this album I started to get a little bored. This was a nice change of pace, but they were on their way to losing me on this one. And I'll get into it over the next couple of tracks. But
Okay,
I'm not going to say I don't want to slam it. It had its moments, but I was starting, my interest was starting to wane.
okay, and Fred?
Yeah, I agree with Lance. I unfortunately, whenever I hear a song start off with like ballady, I kind of just cringe a bit. But I wait and see if they make up for it. Like when I first heard "Fade to Black," I was like, "Oh, really? Like acoustic guitar? What the hell's going on?" But then it's like, "Oh, yeah, it's not bad." And they get rocking later on, and it's really good. It's like now I love "Fade to Black," but it's just like they just needed to focus more on energy, and it would have been fine. I think they were trying to be a little bit like let's not exert ourselves when we go on tour or something, and let's play more down tempo stuff and girls like ballads, right? I think that's a thing. Mandatory ballad like songs that will gain the interest of the females that are forced to go to the show because of their boyfriends. So I understood what they were doing. I get it, and the chorus, as always, that's like their forte. The No Haven for the Raven has a great chorus. I love it. Just waiting for the chorus and then sing along. It's like, okay, that's good enough for me. But yeah, I agree. They started to wane. Their energy starts to dissipate with the song, and you can tell. So yeah, on to the next one.
And yeah, that's well, I mean, first of all, I'm sure there's girls listening that do like non-ballads. But yes, and back at that time, that is what everybody was doing. They said, "Oh, you got to have it," and it wasn't necessarily the band that wanted to do it; it was their record companies and stuff saying, "We need a ballad, we need a hit, whatever." And yes, we need the girls to come watch you too. So whatever. But anyway, okay,
Money.
then we go to the Unwanted, and does this kick it back into high gear or not, Fred?
Well, that's funny, but no, it doesn't. It's just another filler for me. Like, unfortunately, the chorus saves the song. Like I've said, they got that Halford formula patented, and it just works every time when the chorus kicks in. So I can listen to it. But yeah, the only thing that I like is again the twiddling of guitars, like twiddling throughout, like sprinkled throughout the song. Like I was a big Jakey Lee fan in '85 for sure. So I love that, like when guitar players just do like little random, like little displays of power with their fingers and like, whatever. So at least it has that. Um, I don't know. The Unwanted sounds kind of like a very dramatic, kind of like a French opera or a Broadway play. So I thought that was a pretty cool theme. But yeah, it doesn't really hit the mark. Just off center.
And Lance, do you agree?
I agree 100% totally with Fred. My comments on this song was, yeah, you know, it just and I hate to slam work because they put their craftsmanship into it. They recorded the song, they did the parts and everything, and I'm sure they put the work into it. Uh, it just didn't move me, and that's just my opinion. Maybe somebody else out there thinks this is their favorite track on the album. For me, it didn't do it for me. And like I said, it started to wane a little bit with No Haven for the Raven. Then I hit the Unwanted. And I was like, okay, man, I'm glad there's only one song left. Despite the fact that they had kicked my ass the previous 6 or 7.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Okay, then we finish with, what is this? A song about Kiss?
Yeah, Gods of
It's
Thunder,
called
huh?
Gods of Thunder. What was it? Didn't Kiss have
God of
an album?
Thunder. I'd kiss a God of Thunder.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a big Kiss fan. Lance, what do you think of this song? Not that it has anything to do with Kiss, but maybe it does in a way.
It was my note here says good, but I've heard it already. But I like the vocal. I thought it had a great vocal on it. I thought James Neal put a great vocal on the track. I usually give albums, my last song test. Are they trying as hard on the last song as they did on the opening song? And Gods of Thunder kind of measures up with Rockin' With You. Like Fred said, it's good but not great. And the same with this song. And again, I don't want to slam anybody's work. It's a decent track. And like I said, it's got a fabulous vocal on it. But for me, I was kind of like, yeah, okay.
And Fred, what do you think then with the last one?
Yeah, I was hoping, I would have hoped that they understand, like even like when you do a concert, right? The last song, what do you got to do? You got to leave them wanting more, right? That's what you got to do. The last song on any album, leave them wanting more, just like Metallica did in like every single album in the '80s. The last song, killer. You just want more Metallica, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they did not come through with this song, unfortunately.
Yeah, you kind of want to grab that album and flip it over and play it again, and it just wasn't there on the last 3 tracks for me.
That's right. This is where you flip it, put the needle back on, squeeze it dry, right, and sing a line.
Yeah, exactly.
Crack another beer and enjoy that track. But yeah, this is where you can hear the limitation of the band. Like in 1985, you had bands experimenting, and like I said, thrash, speed, death, even grind. I think made a was it? I can't remember when Napalm Death came out. Was it '85 or '86?
Yeah, I'm not
But
sure.
you had Doom. You had Celtic Frost, not Celtic Rock. Celtic Frost in '85 came out with To Megatherion, and you can hear that kind of like experimentation and where metal was gonna go. Like they predicted, hey, like you gotta shake things up, man. It's not 1982 anymore. You gotta really go out there and do something weird, something memorable, and stand out. And Malice just did not want to stand out on that last track, and it was very disappointing for me. And I didn't even bother with License to Kill.
Oh, you
So
didn't.
I didn't. So I was like, this is I think I just felt it. It's like there's just more, there's better things happening, more exciting things happening. And Malice was clearly a limited band that was a little too late to the scene. So that's the way I felt. And I did hear License to Kill like years later after it was released, not when it was released.
Mhm.
And I gotta say, like, I know you guys probably like it more than in the beginning, but for me, just it sounded like a band that was forced to go a bit more light and mainstream, and that's why they were featured in Vice Versa. Like the band playing live with Fred Savage in the crowd and whatever. So I was like, yeah, they're really, really pushing them. And this is the last push for the band to make it big in 1987 or 88. I think that movie came out. And
Yeah,
obviously,
87.
yeah, they just could not do it. They didn't have that fire to innovate. So unfortunately, the gods of thunder just flake out for me.
Okay, so that's the album. Now, usually, I guess Fred, you probably maybe know this, but we usually rate the album out of 10. Do you want to give this album a rating out of 10?
Oh, for sure. I would say it's a solid 7.5.
Okay, and Lance, what would you give it?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 7. It was good. The production sounded good. The songwriting's good. The musicianship wise, I mean, these guys kill it. And James Neal was a fabulous vocalist. I think if they could have finished a little bit stronger, they could have pushed it to an 8 or so. But yeah, I mean, I'd give it a solid 7.
And that's probably what I would give it, even though, like I said, I didn't get a good chance to get back into it too much. But and I did like the next album better, like I mentioned before. But again, it's not an album I go back and listen to much or anything like that
Kind of one
anymore.
of those when you're looking for something. Yeah, you know what? I haven't listened to this, and
Yeah.
you give it a shot. You're not going to pull out every time. Once in a
No,
while.
and you mentioned because that's the vice versa of the movie there you mentioned with Judge Reinhold and sorry, the kid from the Wonder Years. Sorry.
Yeah, they're
Um,
really top.
yeah, but 'cause I do remember watching that movie. It probably wasn't at the theater, I don't think. But anyway, I rented the movie or whatever. Cause I don't know if I rented it because I knew Alice was on it, or I can't remember that. But that could have even been the first time I heard Malice was I saw, oh, they're on this movie. And then I went back and bought the albums. I don't know, but it's too hard to remember. And like I say, it wasn't like, I can remember when I got Master of Puppets or whatever, because I still listen to it all the time.
Right.
So when you have these groups that you weren't that big and you didn't listen to it that much, it's hard to remember when you first heard it. Now, usually I ask if about seeing them live, and I'm gonna assume nobody's seen them live.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
I did not.
You weren't at the Slayer shows telling them to get off the stage or whatever.
Man, that's got to be tough.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's see. So yeah, so I don't know if you want to go check if you want to go watch that movie, vice versa. It was, your classic what was that, Freaky Friday concept where the dad changes place with the son, and the son, Fred Savage, is his real name, liked Malice, I guess. And so Judge Reinhold was in his son's body, so he went to see. And so what was he? Judge Reinhold was like 35 years old probably in this movie, and everybody's like looking at him. What are you doing at a heavy metal concert? And here I am in my 50s. But whatever. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna do our top 10 albums of 1985 to finish it off. And this was a pretty good year, at least in my eyes, when I looked through the list. Went, the hell, how am I gonna do this? So I guess I'll start first. I guess I usually sometimes go last, but I'm going to start first here. And I will do mine. I will start. Because I didn't do this right. Okay. Now there's a lot of close calls here, whatever. Because I mean, I left Dio off the top 10 with Sacred Heart. It's a good album, but it's like other stuff. But okay, so my number 10, I got Dokken Under Lock and Key. As I used to listen to that all the time back then. I guess that's when I was more into the hair metal stuff, even though that's a little heavier than hair metal, but still it had half the song were ballads and half weren't.
George Lynch is amazing, just incredible.
Yes. And it's a great singer too. Sorry, I forget his name.
Don.
Yes, Doc, of course, Don Dokken.
Don Dokken, yeah.
Sorry. Okay. And number 9, a group that was mentioned earlier by Lance, I had Kick Axe. Welcome to the club.
There you go.
It's not that heavy. It's not as heavy as the first one.
I like it better than the first one.
Yes, but I mean, yeah, it's not as heavy as Vices, but it's just I seen Kick Axe at a small bar near where I live, and so yeah, I really like that album. So that made my number 9. Number 8, I got Halloween with Walls of Jericho. I'm a big Halloween fan, and that was like their first full studio album.
Mhm.
And their EP also came out the same year, which also was good, of course. But I guess the same songs are on Walls of Jericho, I think, that were on the EP, if I remember correctly. Number 7, I got another Canadian band with Exciter and Long Live the Loud. They're a thrash band, in case anybody doesn't know who they are.
Mhm.
And they were one of the, in 1983, when Metallica came out with Kill 'Em All and Slayer had their debut album and Exciter had their debut album. Those were like the first 3, I would say, thrash albums that existed. And Metallica used to say the Exciter influenced them, even though Metallica came out first. But you understand that. But anyway, number 6, I got another group that has been mentioned, Wasp with The Last Command.
Mm.
Number 5, I have a group that maybe, I don't know if either one of you have heard of this. This is another one of these kinds of groups that didn't last, but the group was called USA Warrior, or just Warrior maybe. But of course, there must have been another group called Warrior somewhere. But the album is called Fighting for the Earth. Does either one of you remember that album?
I have not ever heard of that. No.
Okay.
No, I have
Fred?
not either. Nope, never heard it. I
Well,
will.
it's
I'll check it out.
yeah, if you can. It's not on Spotify. They only got like one song on Spotify for some reason. I think it's the song Fighting for the Earth. But there's another music thing. Oh, I forget the name of it. It's not Apple, but it's another one that's supposed to be better sounding quality. I just can't remember the name, but they have the album on there. If you want to do the free trial,
Is it on
you can go on there or just find it somewhere else, maybe. But yeah, I
YouTube?
really like that album, and I still listen to it, or would listen to it, except I got rid of that thing to stick with Spotify. But anyway, yes, it's a good album. Check it out if you want to. Number 4, where's my 4, Anthrax, Spreading the Disease. I was a big thrash guy too.
Great.
Fred said so. Yeah, Spreading the Disease. And my number 4, my number 3 is Yngwie Malmsteen's Marching Out album.
Yeah.
As I really loved Yngwie back then, and this album had a singer for most of the songs, I believe, and it was one of my favorite albums back then. My number 2 is Trouble with The Skull, because I'm a big Trouble fan.
Mhm.
And if anybody doesn't know, there's a new album out by a group called Legions of Doom, which is members of Trouble and members of The Skull together. And the album is called The Skull 3. And I have an album review on our website you can check out. And hopefully soon we're going to have an interview by Lance with one of the members of them, if people can not get sick and cancel things.
Well, I messed it up the first time, and then the Roland got laryngitis. So yeah, we're working. Hopefully, this coming Tuesday.
Okay, hopefully that happens, because that'll be cool. Because yeah, Trouble is one of my favorite bands of all time. And my number 1 is another thrash one, and that's Exodus with Bonded by Blood. That's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Nice.
I do have a few honorable mentions, I guess. Slayer was in there with Hell Awaits, and another 2 more Canadian bands, Razor, Executioner Song, Thor, Only the Strong. And of course, Dio I mentioned, Sacred Heart, but that's not one of his best. And Hallows Eve, Tales of Terror is another one, which I really only like one song on it, but I love the song so much that I almost put this on my list.
Was it D.E.?
Yes. Okay. Anyway, now let's go, Fred. What's your top 10? If you have them in order, great. If you don't, that's fine. If you have them in order, start at your number 10, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure. I got them in order. It took me a while because it's really 1985 was just chock full of amazing stuff.
Yes.
But regardless, at number 10 I have SOD, Speak English or Die.
Nice.
That's a classic for all times. Like, is the perfect crossover album in my mind. I can listen to Milk like 10 times in a row, no problem. And number 9, Saxon with Innocence is No Excuse. A lot of people did not like that album because they got kind of poppy or something, but I loved it. I was pretty young, so it sounded great to me, just like YNT's Down for the Count. I love that one too, and a lot of people hate it because it's too poppy. But whatever. Number 8, we got the Dokken Under Lock and Key. Listened to that cassette a billion times. I loved it. Great. They were like the perfect pop song, perfect pop band. Sorry. Just like Rat, they were great pop songwriters, but they were just, ostracized from mainstream because of their long hair and the guitars and probably the satanic panic that was going on. It's really tragic. It, like, seriously, the Christian right and the PMRC ruined heavy metal's hierarchy that belonged in the top. But I digress. Number 7, Razor, Evil Invaders. Amazing album. Loved it. Heard it a billion times. And I will admit I stole some of those riffs because I used them for my own band because they were so cool. That guy, I can't remember his name. But yeah, I respect the hell out of the guitarist because he came up with some great stuff. Not just that album, but yeah.
Yeah.
And number 6, Accept, Metal Heart. One of my all-time favorite Accept albums. It was definitely a bit more poppy, especially more than Restless and Wild and whatever, Balls to the Wall. But I love every song on this. Midnight Mover, fantastic video. I think they did the whole Matrix thing with the rotating cameras in that video. Way before their time. Number 5, Overkill, Feel the Fire, of course. That's an amazing debut that needs to be respected. No matter what you think, like there's a lot of people that hate Overkill's vocals, Bobby Blitz vocals. I think it's genius. Great vocals. Okay, number 4, The Last Command. Definitely on my rotation a lot. I love that. Like, even though it was not as good as the debut, like heavy wise, I think the songwriting was a bit more focused and the songs breathed a little more, and it was like they were ready for radio domination. But sadly, again, the situation would not allow that. Number 3, Exodus, Bonded by Blood. And Motley Crue. You guys probably panned this album too, but Theater of Pain. That was my first Motley Crue album that I acquired by somebody that hated it because it didn't sound like Shout at the Devil. So I got it really cheap. And I don't know, I just forced myself to like it. And Mick Mars, I just thought was a phenomenal player. I was always entertained by his solos, his riffs, and it was just dirty, bluesy, good times. It was like a summer album for me. So a lot of fond memories. And in total contrast, number 1, Slayer with Hell Awaits. Became a huge Slayer fan after that, especially after Rain and Blood. I lost my mind. I almost got a Slayer tattoo, but I didn't. I never did. I got a DRI tattoo instead. But yeah, great stuff.
Cool. Now I'm just going to go back. Razor, that you mentioned, of course, from Canada. They had 2 albums out in the same year because I almost had their other album, their first album, because I really like the song Take This Torch off of Executioner Song album. And of course, that's Dave Carlo on guitars, who was the name you were trying to get there.
Yes.
Okay, Lance, are you ready?
Yeah, I kind of threw this list together while you were doing the intro to this podcast. So. But I got some good stuff, and I realized after I made it, it's sort of based on albums that I bought, and obviously I liked, and a lot of bands that I saw live that year. So number 11, my honorable mention, number 11, Trouble, Pray for the Dead, The Skull. Pray for the Dead was one of my favorite tracks off that, and I'm really looking forward to that interview. Hopefully we get it done on Tuesday. Yes. Number 10, AC/DC, Fly on the Wall. I think it's underrated. No, it's not for those about to rock or Back in Black or anything like that, but it's got some good stuff on it. I like Sink the Pink, Shake Your Foundations. I saw them on tour, and opening up that night was my number 9 artist, Yngwie Malmsteen, with Marching Out. That was an interesting pairing, but great show, good stuff. Number 8, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curve, ZZ Top's Afterburner. I play this a lot, and I'll admit I liked Rough Boy. I thought it was a great ballad, but the other stuff was good though on it. And the videos, of course, were great, and it's ZZ Top. Number 7, Twisted Sister, Come Out and Play. Again, another album that title track, Come Out and Play, is fantastic. And I saw those guys in January of '86. It was a short-lived tour because Leader of the Pack had come out and everything tanked. Great show. And opening up that night was Dawkins, who's my number 6, with Under Lock and Key. That album hadn't come out yet. I saw him later on in '86 open for Priest after the album came out. And that, believe it or not, Dawkins Judas Priest worked. Great stuff. Where is my number 5? The Cult, Love. I played that album, the grooves off of that album. She Sells Sanctuary, Rain, good stuff. Number 4, Rush, Power Windows. I had that on cassette and played it forever. Number 3, Motley Crue, Theater of Pain. I agree with Fred on this. I saw him on tour in August of '85 with Y&T opening. And I have vivid memories. Like Fred said, it was a summer album. I remember buying that in the summer. I bought that album and Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms at the same time. It just shows you how mixed music was back then, you know? Number 2, Wasp, The Last Command, of course, another one I had on cassette at the time and just played it forever. And my number 1 album for that year, it's not his number 1, but my number 1 album for that year, because I saw him on tour, and it was, to this day, the greatest show I have ever seen in my life, and that's Dio with Sacred Heart. Just a phenomenal concert that night. Great album. No, it's not The Last in Line or, any of the others, but I like it, and it just takes me back to that night and that concert. Always live in a very, very special part of my memories.
I saw that tour as well.
You did? The Sacred Heart tour?
Yes, I think that was the first time I seen Dio, I think.
Phenomenal show.
Who opened for them? Do you remember?
That night it was Rough Cut opened up for him.
Okay, I think Helix opened for them actually in
Now,
Toronto, I think.
did you see Dio though? Did he still have Vivian Campbell, or had Craig Goldie replaced him by then?
I'm not sure. I think it might have been Greg Goldie, but I'm not positive.
Yeah.
Because it's been so long.
Yeah. Great guy. I've interviewed Craig a couple of times. He's an awesome, awesome person. I was thrilled to be able to see the classic Dio lineup with Vivian Campbell and Jimmy Bain and Vinny Appice.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I can't really remember for sure, but I'm kind of thinking it was Greg Goldie, but
yeah.
Okay.
No slouch when it comes to that stuff.
No. So there was so many albums. Like there's other King Cobra had an album that was pretty good that year, and of course Iron Maiden's Live After Death. But I didn't.
Scorpions Worldwide Live came out that year.
Usually I don't like live albums in my top 10 thing anyway, but I would have been okay if one of you would have mentioned it. If Eric was on here, one of our other writers, he would have mentioned it. And let's see. My favorite band, Faith No More, had an album, but it's not with Mike Patton, so it would be close to being making it off the list. Okay. I guess we're done. Okay, now I don't know what we're doing next, so I don't have that. I'm not that far in advance this week. I didn't know what we were doing last week, but I don't know what we're doing next week. But thanks to Lance and Fred for joining me on this podcast.
Yeah, good times. I want to thank Fred for taking me back to that Malice album. Like I said, it's a solid, until the last 3 tracks, it's a solid album. And the last 3, it's not like they're bad. It just gets a little repetitious, but poised for success and just fell through the cracks, is the only thing I can think of. Like so many of those other bands that deserved recognition and didn't quite get it,
And Fred, do you have any closing comments?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Lance, but I think that we have to highlight these albums, even though they're not perfect albums. I think the gems within them are very much worthwhile. And these days you can make your own playlist and just put the good songs in there if you want. Take them to the gym and get pumped and whatever. But and I think they deserve more recognition. And I'm totally down to talk about obscure albums that need to be highlighted for, especially like maybe you got younger listeners, like because nobody's there to guide them, right? We have to do the dirty work for the new generation that, you know, I have basically, they all have ADHD now. Like there's all this stuff at them, you know, the mainstream media, and they're watching cat videos every 3 minutes or something because the algorithms. So we have to do our part as responsible metal heads to, you know, inform the public. I know just to throw it out there, if you guys are down, the other album I was thinking after this, it doesn't have to be like, can be whenever, maybe like a couple of months or whatever. Mortal Sin, Mayhemic Destruction. It was their debut. I don't know if you guys know them. They're Australian.
I know the name, but I don't think I've ever listened to them that I can remember anyway.
Definitely check out that album, Mayhemic Destruction. That's their first album. I discovered that band in South America, because in America, I think it was they just didn't really make it. But check it out. Tell me if you guys want to do something with that. I'd be totally down, or, you know, any other ideas you want to throw out. That's cool. Just reach out to me. And this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And yes, thank you for sending in a message. It's nice when we hear from fans. And like I say, maybe we're going to try to see if you want to join the Metal Pit even now too. Since it's
yeah,
good to
for sure.
people with music knowledge and stuff. And we always
Right.
need
Sorry. Yeah, I did. I have been working on my recap of last night's show, so I will have that ready for you in the coming week for sure.
Okay, great. Okay, I guess that's it. I don't have anything. Oh, one thing I was going to say, maybe Malice, the problem was that they sounded too much like Judas Priest, or they sounded like Iron Maiden or Helix or Kickaxe. Maybe they didn't have their own distinct sound, and maybe that was the problem, that they didn't really reach it anywhere because everybody thought
their own sound.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening, and tune in again next week, and we'll have another good album, I hope, either a classic or a one like this that not many people know about. So thanks for listening, everybody, and goodbye.